You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. My guest today is Ron Mintz, who is the Regional Vice President for Golden Gate Sothebys International Realty in the San Francisco Bay Area. Ron has an extensive real estate background, from property management to being a sales agent, and now managing over 200 agents in 7 real estate offices. Ron was also the 2016 president for the Contra Costa Association of Realtors, and today continues his volunteer work with the association as a past president. In this episode, we discuss his early beginnings into real estate, advice for new and experienced agents, and we gain valuable insight into the future of California's housing market. Well, we are recording here, and Ron Mintz is my guest today. I want to thank you for coming on. I think this is going to be a great episode.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Now, you're the vice president for Golden Gate Sothebys, and you manage 2 offices, correct?
I'm a regional vice president for Golden Gate Sotheby's. I technically manage 7 offices for Golden Gate, but primarily I focus on 2 in the Danville Lafayette area.
7 offices, so you're busy. I thought it was only 2.
Well, it started out that way, and then I actually left Sotheby's during a transition from Bay Sotheby's to Golden Gate Sotheby's. And when I came back, that's when I took on a little more responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what got you into the current position? Like, well, first of all, what got you into real estate?
Well, back in 1989, I actually I was installing audio and video equipment for a living for a high-end electronics company in Los Angeles. And I had dislocated my shoulder in a skiing accident and I had to have surgery. So I had about 4 months where I was doing nothing. And I thought, why not just get my real estate license? So in 1989, I got my real estate license. And it's interesting because at the time, I had no desire to ever get into real estate whatsoever. I had met my now wife at the time, and she said, look, I'm going to give you 2 months to get a job. If you don't get a job, then I'm leaving you. So I'm like, okay, well, I had a job, but she's like, no, you have to have a career now. So I got into property management, and I was in property management for about 13 years. And then I worked for a variety of for-profit and nonprofit organizations. The nonprofit organization, the last one I worked for, had to close. So they actually laid me off. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever had nothing to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had become friendly with a realtor at the time who said, hey, if you're ever interested in getting into real estate, give me a call. So I remembered that. I gave him a call and have been working in real estate ever since. Started working with him back in 2002 and worked with him for about 10 years and then sort of moved through real estate during that time to get where I am now.
Okay. Yeah. Now, you said you were in property management for 13 years, and that's my specialty right now. Yeah. So what made you get out?
What makes you stay in is a better question. Actually, property management was phenomenal. When I first started, it was for profit, and it's a very different philosophy when you're working to make money. One of the things that I really wanted to get involved in was helping people in some way or another. And I was managing a portfolio of affordable housing units all over the Bay Area. And it was phenomenal, and I got lured away by some nonprofit organizations, and I really enjoyed that more because the focus is actually on helping people when you work for a not-for-profit. It's a lot. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and when you're doing it for that long, you could be out to dinner and boom, you get at the time paged. Now it's calls. You can be, at a wedding and boom, the sewer line decides to back up and flood a bunch of units. It just seemed like I needed to have a little more stability. I had a child at the time. I still have a child, but she was young, and I wanted to really have more control of my schedule. Little did I know that real estate actually does the same exact thing as property management, but you do have a little more control. And it was a natural progression. I got into real estate and actually got the bug. I got bit by the bug and haven't recovered.
So what's it like managing 7 offices?
It's
now, how many agents are
so
under
this
you
is
right now?
recorded, right? So I have to be careful what I say. I have about 200 agents.
Okay.
What I find, let's see, how do I phrase this? Well, I'm not going to say anything here that I haven't said before. So it's like being a preschool teacher. It's being a preschool teacher. It's being a psychologist. It's being a shoulder to lean on, and it's being a problem solver.
A mentor.
All those things. Yeah, and a mentor. Yeah, and wrapped up in all into one. I love the fact that every day is a different day, and every day I get hit with problems I've never been hit with before. It's tough. It's very challenging because you have a lot of people who are pulling at you all the time. If you're not organized, if you're not constantly keeping track of actually the work you have to do, it's very easy to get pulled away.
So it seems like that's a natural transition from property management to where you ended up now, because for property management, you have to be extremely organized.
That's very true. Absolutely. I actually, in the roles that I played in property management, it really prepared me for this. I love dealing with people. I love dealing with the diversity of the job. Property management's the same way. So you're right. It's a natural progression.
Yeah. So what's your day-to-day look like?
I am a very early riser, so I get up anywhere between 4 and 5 in the morning. I get up, and that time for me is the most valuable time. I review all my files at that time. So all my real estate transaction files I deal with at that time. So when I actually start work, I can be pulled in multi directions. What a horrible way to say that. In multiple directions, and not have it really interfere with the work that I actually have to do. So I do that first thing in the morning, and then I hit an office somewhere. If there's a meeting going on, then I actually go to the meeting. I also have a recruiter that makes a lot of phone calls for me and has access to my calendar, and he plugs in just a ton of appointments. So most of my stuff is just moving from one meeting to another pretty much throughout the day, and trying to squeeze out time for myself whenever possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, being that you manage a lot of agents, this sub-series of the podcast is called Real Realtors.
Okay.
And what we like to do is really give some valuable information to realtors that listen in and give them tips.
Okay.
Okay. So being that you manage a lot of agents, 200 agents, what are some of the key characteristics that you find in general that an agent needs in order to succeed in this business?
Well, let me kind of approach that from where I've seen agents fail in this business, because if you do the opposite, then chances are you'll succeed. A lot of agents these days don't I don't know if it's these days, but a lot of agents don't view this as a real business. A lot of agents believe that they can just dabble in this business and then all of a sudden things will happen. What I see with agents who are very successful is they're very regimented. They have schedules. They treat this as if it's a business. They show up every day. They do tasks that build their business every day, from whether it's prospecting, whether it's just meeting people. That's what they do to be successful. The agents that sit in an office somewhere and hope that the phone's going to ring and don't actually actively generate, they're the ones that don't really do the business that they want to do.
Okay. Now, for a new agent that's starting into the business, what would you recommend, or how would you recommend for them to start, selling properties? Because obviously your name's not out there.
Right.
And there's lead generating, then there's learning contracts, disclosures.
Right.
So how would you approach training a new agent?
So what I do is try to develop some accountability system for them, so that when they start, they have an idea of exactly what it is that they should try to do based on having conversations with them about what their goals are. So what I highly recommend is training, without a doubt. And unfortunately in this business, people get started before they get trained. So I have to sort of mix together a training while they're actually doing things to get business. Doing open houses, figuring out how to prospect for, your farm, if that's the direction you want to go. We sit down and figure out a schedule to have that done. How many people you should contact, what it is. We do some role playing in terms of how you should speak to people. I think people need to learn sort of the lingo, the real estate lingo, and develop ultimately confidence. If you have the confidence, you can sell anybody. I don't care if you just started yesterday. If you come off as being a person who is a resource for them, you will be successful. Because it's not about having an answer for everything. It's about saying, hey, I know where to get the answer, and I'll get back to you to get and give you the answer. So agents who can approach things that way tend to be a little more successful.
And that's a really good piece of advice. And I think one of the easiest ways to build confidence is to study the contracts and disclosures.
Absolutely. Oh my God, you'd be amazed. Well, you wouldn't be amazed, but I think the public would be amazed as to how many agents actually don't know the paperwork involved.
Yeah.
We make it very simple for everybody with zip forms, and at least in California, and that's phenomenal. But that allows you to complete forms without really having to read them. So a lot of agents stumble over that stuff, and then they get caught in a situation that they didn't really account for, but had they read the contract, they would have known what was going to happen. That's something I face every day.
Yeah, I started real estate when I was 18, and one of the first things I decided to do was just memorize literally the purchase contract and all the disclosures and what it meant. And so I was literally going on Google looking up what these clauses, what certain words I had never dealt with actually meant. And that's how I built my confidence. And I know other agents that started when they were 18, 19. Mm-hmm. We're not even old enough to drink yet. We're here helping people close $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 transactions.
The biggest transaction they'll probably ever have in their lives.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And so that's literally what we did, and just get to know the contract. And you're right, it's amazing how many agents don't know the contract, because understanding how certain things work. Right. One of the most common things is now in the purchase contract, and every single time they do an update, you always want to read the contract and always.
Yeah, please underline that and say that a few times.
Yeah.
People don't do that. They just go off the old stuff.
Yeah. Read the updated contracts and the updated changes, because one of the common ones is the notice to perform and demand to close escrow.
Right.
They changed the dates from 24 to 48 and then 72 hours.
They actually change it to days now, not even hours.
Yeah.
So, and agents don't understand what that means.
Yeah. And so when I get a notice to perform that's marked at 24 hours, I laugh at it and I don't even say a word.
it
buys me more. Yeah, because I understand that notice is invalid.
Right.
And so when they finally try to pull the trigger on killing the deal or forcing us to do something, I can at least protect my clients and say, hey, you gave us an invalid form, you need to redo this again. And that usually buys us an extra week.
Exactly. And that is a fundamental problem in this industry. And it goes back to people who don't read the contract and don't understand it. A typical notice to perform is 2 days. What does that mean? To the average person, you would say, okay, it's 2 days. So I give it to you today at 4. Today is Wednesday, so it expires Friday at 4. Well, that's not the way it works in real estate. So people need to understand how that works. And the demand to close, it's one of my pet peeves that people think, oh, I just give them a notice to perform. Well, they've already removed all contingencies. They've already done everything they're supposed to do in the contract. What are they supposed to perform? Well, they're supposed to close escrow. No, that's not a performance. That's a demand to close. And you need to give them a demand to close. And they don't understand. And that's 3 days. Then you get into when you can serve these notices, which people don't understand either, that you can actually serve them 3 days before so that it expires on the date that you want it to expire. I love being the agent or having the agent that takes advantage. I mean, I know this is a horrible thing, but takes advantage of an agent that doesn't know what they're doing rather than the other way around. And
Yeah. Well, it protects your
unfortunately-
clients,
Yeah.
and then your clients appreciate, and they also see how well you know the contract.
Exactly.
And they can see that comparison when they start talking to other agents.
Exactly.
And then they just want to work with you exclusively.
Right. And it's the confidence again. It's
Yeah.
the confidence in being able to say, hey, look, I may not know every single line of the contract. But you know what? Before I give you an answer, I'm going to investigate it and I'm going to get you the right answer so that your client feels comfortable that
Yeah.
they're working with the right person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, real estate teams. Real
Yes.
estate teams are becoming very popular. Do you have any teams in? I'm sure you do in some of the offices you
I do.
manage.
I do.
So, do you see a positive advantage with teams, or kind of equal if an agent decides to work individually, or do you think it maybe depends on their own personalities?
I think it's all of that. Teams, so there are multiple ways of setting up a team. So it really depends on how you approach setting up a team. Teams are like a marriage. If you don't treat it that way, you're going to get divorced. And unfortunately, in our business, most teams don't survive. In our business, we have a lot of ego-driven personalities. And when you get two people who have an ego or multiple people and all their egos are butting up against each other, it's not going to work. I try to discourage teams, really, because of that. Most people aren't prepared. They can barely run their own business, let alone try to figure out how to run a team. But I do have some successful teams. There's no doubt about it. And if you go about if everybody understands what their role is in the team and they're able to set those egos aside, you can actually grow business with a team. But some people form teams for the wrong reasons. They form teams because they're lonely. They think that it's going to generate more business by having more than one person, and it doesn't. So unless you're really prepared and have thought out exactly how you want to
Especially
structure
if you
your
partner up with someone who doesn't generate business.
right,
too.
exactly. And what happens is they're looking for you to be a rainmaker. Well, you were not a rainmaker to begin with. So what makes them think you're going to be a rainmaker now? And it's you have to have it really laid out as to what the roles are going to be of the team. If you have a team leader and everything's done under that person's name and they are essentially a rainmaker, that's great. But that doesn't happen that often. So what happens is also with teams, you get people who work successfully in a team, and then they start thinking, wait a minute, why am I paying all this money to somebody else when I could just do it all on my own? And then there's division, in the team again. So it's a challenge, and I understand the necessity for it because you can't do everything when you have a ton of transactions. But I caution people, and I really try to work with them as to how to formulate a team that's going to be successful rather than just getting a group of people together and then having the headache of that.
So you would probably recommend to set it up more like, okay, so and so person A is the CEO, person B is the CFO. Would you set it up more corporate structure, or would you set it up into more task-driven positions where one person's working with buyers, another one with listings, one other generates leads, that sort of thing?
I really think it depends on the personalities of the people involved. If there is a leader, then I would set it up task-wise. If there's not, I would say don't set up a team. So I think task-wise is probably the best way to go about doing it. You have somebody who generates leads, does listing appointments, and then you have buyer agents and things like that. I think that's great. I really believe, though, that most agents would be fine with just an assistant rather than an actual team. But I deal with whatever is presented to me. I have a very successful team now where there's a team leader, but all the people underneath this person are able to do their own business, generate their own business. They work out a payment structure amongst themselves, and it's quite successful just because the personalities mesh well together. It's rare. It's rare. So I don't care necessarily about the format of the team. I worry more about the personalities and most of all, what type of agreement they have. They have to have a partnership agreement. It's sort of like they need to have a prenup, sort of, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, not that anybody wants to go into it with it dissolving at some point, but it will dissolve at some point, and you need to have an exit strategy from that team spelled out in advance.
Now, you were at Image Connect in August just a couple months ago,
I
right?
was.
Did you go to the class about building agent teams?
I didn't, no.
Okay.
But I have been to.
And there were like a million classes there.
Yeah.
But so I attended there out of curiosity, and one of the speakers, and I forgot his name, he mentioned before you start building the team, hire an assistant, just like what you said.
Mm-hmm.
He said, then when you think you're ready to start a team, hire a second assistant. When you think you're ready to do another team, hire a third assistant. And basically his whole premise was just keep pushing it out until you know you've got the business and the volume
Right.
to bring someone in.
Right.
Because part of the problem is and he was coming at it from a different angle, that he's controlling the leads, he's controlling the business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bring another person in that has the same personality as you or the same business, and they're bringing in leads, it starts to get difficult as to, well, who brought this lead in?
Right.
What split does it
Right.
go to? And it just becomes very confusing,
Right.
as opposed to someone just working under you. And then if they wanted to leave, that's fine, but you still have your business.
And that's great. I actually worked on a team that way, but I'm not an ego-driven person, so I didn't need to have my name out there. The problem is in this business is it's all about name recognition. So if you're working as that assistant or as a lower team member and nothing is done under your name, you're not developing any business for yourself for the future. And if that's what your intent is, you're basically going to start from scratch when you make that break. And people don't necessarily understand it, and that's why it creates that sort of just a mess in the structure and the way it works, and that competing sort of business mind where this is my client and that's my client, and and I don't want to pay you for that, and you got to have all that stuff spelled out. You have to have all that ironed out, and I agree with that guy. Just get an assistant.
Yeah.
I mean, really, what is it that you're asking people to do?
Yeah, sometimes agents will get or bring in a partner agent because they don't want to pay for an assistant. And the partner agent comes in, and then they'll split commissions. But sometimes many times when you look at the commission splits, you're paying them way more than you would pay an assistant.
That is correct. So again, I'm not anti-team, but I think that there are better ways of growing your business than all of a sudden just saying, I want a team. But I realize that it is sort of going to be the model for the future, so we have to adapt, and we'll figure out ways. As long as you have a good exit strategy, then great. Try it. Do whatever you need to help you build your business, or whatever you think you need to help you build your business. But ultimately, as unfortunately the broker or the manager, it's going to come back to you when there is a problem. You are going to either have a fight amongst your agents, or one agent's going to leave and ultimately hurt the organization. So we have to look at that from a bigger picture. Also, a lot of agents want to grab existing agents from your company and bring them into a team. And from an owner's perspective, that hurts our bottom line, because when you do that, not obviously, but in most cases, one person's going to have a higher split. The other person's going to want that split now that they're part of the team. And it just creates a problem for us as managers. Again, not adverse to it, but let's talk about it and figure out if it's the right thing to do, because I believe, again, assistance will probably solve majority of your problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, recently, there was an agent getting a lot of press on his for sale signs where he put, buy this house and you get $500 worth of free tacos.
Wow. I'm not aware of that.
So the guy's getting a lot of press everywhere because of tacos, right?
Okay.
So what are some marketing ideas that you've seen that are pretty unique or that you see that work? Now, this $500 taco marketing ploy could just simply be a gimmick for press, which definitely works. It may not necessarily sell the house, right? So what are a few marketing tips that agents can do that will actually help them sell more properties? And this could be buyer side or seller side.
Wow. God, if I knew that, I wouldn't be a manager. I'd be out selling again. No. What are some tips? Here's the thing that I see, because I work for a really prestigious brand. And I know a lot of agents these days walk around thinking that it's all about them, and that wherever they go, the business will go with them. And that's true to a certain degree. But I think a smart agent realizes that if they can utilize what their company offers them in a way to supplement what it is that they present, they're going to win more. So, I mean, I don't know what's appropriate here in terms of me saying what my company does, but just from an sort of a big picture thing.
We have no filters on the show. You can say whatever you want.
Okay. Okay. So, working for my company, for Golden Gate Sotheby's International Realty, we have things that no other companies can offer. So when I talk to my agents about what clever marketing things that they can do, it's, again, trying to supplement all of their experiences with some of the amazing things that we do and developing a bigger package for people than what other agents are doing, because they're so focused on it being about them. So any marketing tip I would give would be how to utilize who you associate with in order to grow your business, not just make it about you. If you're looking for clever type things, sorry, I don't have, clever type marketing stuff that you should do. It's really about basics. Today in our electronic world, people say this all the time. I'm one of them. Go back to olden days and utilize what we used to do when we were younger. Write a letter, write a card, do things that stand out to people and not go with the flow. Don't write emails to everybody. If you just do those basic things, you'll improve. Giving away 500 tacos, as you said, it might be a good thing for the press. I can't really see it instilling confidence in the consumer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I look for. You can be a flash in the pan if you want and do that, but the longevity of that, or is that going to last? No. It'll be just that instant 15 minutes of fame, and then you'll be gone. So if you get into the fundamentals and develop a strategy to utilize things that you have available to you, I think that's a better long-term plan.
Yeah. Now, the handwritten letters is a really good piece of advice. Yeah. That's something that I've heard several, like, multimillionaires, billionaires mention that they do on a consistent basis, even to this day. And they've been doing it for 20, 30 years. Yep. And it's something that I did a while back and I'm trying to do now. I still send out handwritten letters every now and then, but I want to say maybe 90% of everyone who receives a handwritten letter from me contacts me to thank me. And I keep it simple, just like, hey, thank you for being a good mentor. Hey, thank you for dinner the other night.
You don't have to write a novel.
Exactly.
It could just be exactly what you said. It could be just very quick. I write, I can't even tell you how many cards I write on a regular basis. Every single agent that does business with us, you included, I believe, should have received a card from us. Because we believe it's extremely valuable. Just that you're taking time, and regardless of what people might think, people actually appreciate when you take time for them, and they recognize it when they see something handwritten. It stands out because we don't live in a handwriting world anymore. They don't even teach handwriting in school anymore. So if you can do something like that, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone the other day with how we don't check our mail anymore. Like, I haven't checked my mailbox in about 3 months. So I have most of my mail, just like important mail, come here to the office. And so with more and more marketing going toward digital and more people going away from print media that's being mailed, it's going to be very interesting to then see how that also eventually turns around the mindset where people will start getting excited about something in the mail because they haven't received anything for so long because everything's digital now.
Yeah. I mean, you don't go to your mailbox, but I can tell you from my own experience, when you go to your mailbox, you find 90% of everything in there to be complete and total junk. And it's like it goes from your mailbox directly to the recycling bin. You don't even look at it at all.
I do that every 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, however, though, if you take your stack of, I don't know if I can use cuss words or anything, but
yeah, you can.
Okay, so just a lot of bullshit that you get. If you take that stack of bullshit and you kind of wring it out, cards will fall out, right? And letters will sort of fall out. And those are the things that you kind of look at. The ones from cable companies and phone companies, you just rip those up. But if there's something that looks like it could be for you, like a birthday card or whatever, you're going to open that. And I totally agree. I think if we can create that excitement about going to your mailbox again, that would be awesome.
I think eventually it will go there when a lot of the big advertising companies realize that they can get more money or more for their money online. Because print media and mailing is still super expensive compared to what they can do online.
Correct.
They just haven't made 100% that switch. When they do, though, you're going to start seeing a lot less mail, I think.
Well, it's about training the consumer. And we in real estate have a huge problem with this as well. The Sunday real estate section in the newspaper. We all know in this business that that is antiquated and really shouldn't be spending lots of money on that. But unfortunately, the consumer still demands it, and we have to comply. So I think you're right. That training process has to occur to kind of shift them. Because we know if you spend those same dollars somewhere else, you can get 3 times the amount of exposure. I'm making up the 3 times, but just to make a point, you get way more exposure than you do in that Sunday real estate section paper where how many people are actually pulling that up? They're really looking online.
Yeah.
So if you can stand out, that's great.
Okay, now I want to touch a little bit on your current role with Contra Costa Association Realtors.
Yeah.
You are the past president. You were the president for 2016.
Yes.
So thank you for the service over at the board.
Absolutely. It's a thankless job, so thank you.
A lot of people don't understand what the association does and what it's there and what the people involved in that volunteer their time actually do on a daily basis to help our industry. And so I want to ask you, how was your year? How was it affected by being the president of the association?
So let me just make sure I understand what you're asking. You're saying how was my year affected by being president?
Yeah, like, how did it change? I mean, you had a lot more duties to handle.
Yeah. So okay. When we are over 4,000 member, almost a 4,000 member organization. And ultimately the services that we provide are geared towards helping our members succeed in this business. I think so last year compared to, because I've been on the board for 7 years, and the difference between being a board member and being president is huge. So let me try to summarize what that actually means. You are responsible for everything that goes on in that organization of 4,000 members. So you have a staff, you have an association executive that runs the day-to-day and deals with the actual day-to-day of the organization, dealing with the staff, monitoring all of that. But as the president, it's your responsibility to oversee her and make sure that the vision that you have for the organization is done. I mean, I lost the word, and it's hard to do on a podcast. Yeah, implemented. Realized is really what it is. So it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of, you're the face of the organization as well. So you have to show up at these things. And really, that's how it it affected my day-to-day. When you're juggling your regular job in conjunction with being president, you have to figure out your schedule. One of the hardest things to do was to figure out how to say no to some things, because everybody's demanding something. I mean, I would get calls from the AE and the government affairs director almost daily, and you have to juggle that. You can't just give in to everything because they're going to ask you for the world, and you have to learn how to say no. I think my specific year, I had some issues, some personnel issues that I had to deal with. And when I say personnel issues, I'm not talking about staff. I'm talking about, I run a board. The board had, 17 people on it. Mm-hmm. I had issues that I had to deal with some of the personnel on the board. And that was a distraction for quite a few months. And it filtered into the state and national level as well. And that was difficult to work with for a little while. Once that got resolved, I was finally able to, and that wasn't unfortunately until like August. I was able to shift into doing something that I really wanted to do for my year, and I was able to accomplish that in the end. But it was challenging because all of the weight of the association is on you. I know I did a horrible job of answering your question, but
no, that's good. No, that's definitely good insight. Yeah, because a lot of people, like even realtors themselves, don't know what we at the association do.
Right.
And
they have no clue.
No clue.
Right.
And the executive committee that's made up of the past president, the current president, the president-elect treasurer, they're on a whole different level than what the other directors on the board are at. Mm-hmm. And then the president is at the ultimate level. Mm-hmm. And all the information that comes to you. Now, one of the hot topics that we're dealing with here in California is housing crisis mm-hmm. and supply and demand. So I want to get your opinion on where we need to go as a society here in the state of California to help this housing market.
Well, it's a unbelievably complex issue. California is an incredible place to live. For those of us who live here, there's nowhere else that you can get everything that you get in California. So having said that, we are a draw. We have, about 180,000 people that move into our state on an annual basis. California as a whole typically only develops about 80,000 new homes. You can see the disparity there. We're 100,000 homes short on an annual basis for people that want to live in California. There are many reasons why. A lot of it has to do with regulation. A lot of it has to do with, not only regulation, but environmental regulation. And affordability definitely plays into that, and the ability of people to move within the state. So if we were to take sort of each one of those separately, if you looked at taxation, for example, people who have lived in their homes for a number of years, and when I say a number of years, it could be even as little as 10 now, have seen such dramatic improvement in the value of their properties that to move to another home will actually cost them more money, which is a horrible dynamic to have in a state. Because if you have a house that it's worth $1 million and you bought it for $300,000, your tax base is based on $300,000. You try to move to another home in the state, the values have gone up so much that, let's say you even move to a $500,000 home, your taxes are going to be greater than the taxes you pay on your $1 million home. So you're screwed. And unless we start developing regulation that's going to deal with that, we're going to be stuck. So that's sort of the taxation. If you get into the regulatory stuff, I don't know if people know about CEQA. It's an environmental restriction, so to speak, on being able to build. That process is so screwed up that if anybody tries to build something in the state, a person can just file something in the courts and just derail that entire project with really no reason, or they don't have to have a reason why they're screwing with you.
And they can stay hidden.
Just do it. Huh?
They can stay hidden too.
Right, of course. And they don't have to publicize who they are. Yeah, it's a huge, huge problem. In itself, if we were to resolve that issue, I couldn't say that would resolve the housing issue, but that is a very big element of it. I think one of the things, and you asked about this before, about the association and what the association does, our government affairs division of the association is probably the most important part of what the association does. It consistently fights for rights, housing rights, and changing these things that are prohibiting housing from being developed. We need legislation at a state level that is going to change that to allow more construction to occur. Again, it's all economics. So if we don't have these demand, we will not have supply. But as it looks right now, again, we have 180,000 people that move in on an annual basis. We only have 80,000 new homes developed. Hopefully the demand is there, but affordability, that's the other element. Unless employment actually starts paying more wages to be able to deal with the affordability aspects, we're not going to get out of it either. And what happens is, you get into infrastructure problems because more people can afford to live further away from where their jobs are. There's not the infrastructure to be able to allow those people to go to work where the money is to be made. So there's a disparity between where people can live and where people can work. It's a multifaceted problem that we have to deal with. But I don't think there's anybody other than maybe the California Association of Realtors, which is really sort of looking at it as a global issue. The problem that we have in the legislature is people focus on small parts of things, and they can affect something on a small level. But like nature, once you do something here, it does have an effect here, whether you know it or not, and they're not looking at the effect that it has. They're just trying to solve some small problem. So I think if we were to have a housing person that looks at things globally and tries to address problems from a global level rather than trying to plug a few holes to see if they can make things happen, we'd be better off as a state. I'm a little optimistic because I know CAR, for example, the California Association of Realtors, is looking at legislation with regards to property taxes and being able to transfer your property tax base from one place to another. Right now we have that ability, but it's very limited. They're looking at making it available statewide. I believe that will have an effect, a good effect on housing, but it's not the end all be all. But if you were to look at that in 3 to 5 years, I believe we're going to look at a totally different housing market than what we see now. Regardless of all the other factors that are in play, we have an older generation and we have a younger generation, and those two generations in the next 3 to 5 years are going to hit each other in a way that we've never seen before. And once that happens, we're going to have, I believe, the hottest housing market that we've probably ever seen in a long time. The baby boomers are going to start either, and I can say this because I'm a baby boomer, they're going to start dying, or they're going to start needing to be placed somewhere. They're going to need to downsize regardless of the expense. And then you have the millennials, where they're going to start wanting to get married. They're going to start wanting to have kids. And that's going to clash in about 3 to 5 years. And those baby boomers are going to need to sell, and those millennials are going to need to buy. And I think that's going to be have a huge impact on California housing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Great. So that's good news for...
I think it's great news for real estate. It's not great news for the overall economy of California because, again, people who can afford to move have those high-paying jobs. And unless we can start, some programs, for teachers and, police, firemen, firewomen, whatever, they can't afford to live in the communities that they work. If we can't change that, that to me is a huge problem. So there's got to be some program or something that allows people to be able to stay in the community for which they want to live in. I don't think that's going to be achieved for quite a while. I don't know what the answer is there unless there's some special financing programs that can get into place to help people like that.
Yeah, and I know some cities have had programs like that in the past, using funds from HUD and that sort of thing.
Correct.
In fact, but you have mismanagement of funds too. City of Hercules was a perfect example of that. And in fact, I just sold a house for a client who had originally purchased, she was a teacher, she originally purchased a home through that same program. It helped her.
Right. And the problem is that those are really hard to come by. And whenever funds are made available, they're snatched up so quickly that it really only affects, like 5 or 10 people in a given community. We need to start affecting a lot more than that. I don't know what the answer is. If I did, believe me, we wouldn't be talking today. But
well, like you said, there's a lot of reasons why the housing market is the way it is.
Right.
From taxation to regulations,
Right.
and then you have even cities and their own personal agendas that want to stop developments.
Correct.
Just because they want to protect a certain look that they feel the city should have.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and on some, look, we can understand why people take approaches. We may not agree with some of the approaches cities take, but you have to protect yourself. But I believe that there are ways that you can have both. Again, I was in the affordable housing industry for a long time. I was in, complex Section 8 based housing. And there are definitely people that take advantage of subsidies, but there are more people that subsidy helps them become a part of society and a vital part of our society. We need to capitalize on that and get rid of the people that take advantage, but because those programs do work. And if you can change people's attitudes, the not in my backyard attitude, I think that you could definitely do some good, but it's hard, and it requires a lot of work, and I haven't met anybody who is willing to do that, whether it be at a city level or in a nonprofit level. They're biting off little pieces because they want wins and they need wins, but they're not trying to address it globally. Again, I don't have the answers, but I would be happy to help. Just trying to figure out the right avenues to do it is very challenging.
Okay. Well, thank you for that insight.
Sure.
And we're here at the end of the show.
Wow, that was quick.
It was quick, yeah. We're already about 45 minutes into it.
Wow.
And time flies by when you're doing these podcasts.
Yeah.
So I want to thank Ron for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you.
And Golden Gate Sothebys. And where's the main office you work out of?
I work out of Lafayette office. Our headquarters are in Marin, and I deal primarily with Lafayette and Danville. I do have offices in Berkeley and Oakland as well.
Okay, great. So on the description, we'll go ahead and link up your websites.
Perfect.
And people can find you that way.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you very much. That was amazing.
Thank you to Ron for being on today's podcast. Very valuable information. For realtors that want to get involved, I encourage you to reach out to your local association and participate by joining one of the various committees. The information you learn is extremely valuable, your clients appreciate it, and the ability to work as a team to make a difference in your community is well worth it. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Thank you to the podcast listeners, and please like, comment, and share this podcast. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.